Hello and welcome back to another English podcast with Paul. So today we're asking about what type of teacher are you? Now, you might say, well, I'm not a teacher, but actually if you connect with other people and you explain something to another person, you probably are a teacher. And whether you like it or not, you may have or be forced upon these situations where you need to explain to somebody else, whether somebody younger or older or the same age, about a topic, about a situation, about knowledge given to somebody else. So we're kind of all teachers. It's really hard to get away from it. And so my question is, what kind of teacher are you? But firstly, what different types of teachers are there? Now, if you remember back at school, we had the old strict teacher that was everything by the rules, everything by the book. And then you had that teacher that was really, really soft and easygoing and didn't really mind what you did, but nobody respected them. Or sometimes, you got to be firm and fair and you respected that. Or sometimes it was a teacher that just saw the potential within you. And you really liked them for that they were positive and happy, or they were just really passionate about what they were getting across. And I kind of think most teachers try to be in this area. And I kind of had this theory, play along with me now. I have this theory that there's an equation between your moral values, plus your personality, plus your attitude, and also maybe your professionalism, trying to mold together in your style of teaching, pedagogy. All right, and so it's kind of a combination of those is my theory. But we all got our own preferred ways of teaching or getting across the information. All right, okay. Now, slightly different subject. How do you win a classroom? Now, you can read the theory, you can understand the theory, but when you're actually in a classroom with lots of autonomous individual people with different attitudes and moods and energy levels, it can be a challenge and can be quite stressful to try and manage this group of individual people. And so there's a few things that they suggest in the books, and some of them work, some of them don't. But a lot of it is down to how you react, how you embrace it. Now, I can tell you a story about going into a classroom with the principal, and the previous teacher was still in the room packing up. And I was told to carry on, get on with it. And it was a big classroom. There was probably like 45 children in this classroom. And I was like, oh, God, what do I do? What do I do? So my cheeky, curious side started to kick in and think, oh, all right, okay. Because the school I was teaching in wasn't like a Western school. It wasn't full of attitude and who's smarter, who's this, who's that. There wasn't that presumption. So in this Asian school, there was quite a lot of respect. And so, again, like I said, taking on my mischievous kind of attitude and nature, I was like, okay, if you have a hand, raise your hand. If you got two hands, raise two hands. And then I started doing a few silly things like that. Like, all right, sit down, stand up. Sit down, stand up. And I did this for a while, for a good 5-10 minutes. And by the end of it, they were a little bit tired. They were getting a bit fed up with this game. But they were listening and they were less full of energy. All right, they knew that I wanted to keep everybody together. And I don't want to say in line, but I'm happy to make them stand up. I'm happy to embarrass myself to make sure they know that I'm in charge here. And so the other principal and other teacher left the room, which made things a bit easier. And then I engaged a bit more on a one-to-one throughout the room, and again having fun. And that was a way that I prefer to engage with people. You know, fun, but we still need to get some work done. So that's what kind of worked for me. Uh, all right, but ultimately, there's a few different ways to manage a classroom. And personally, I feel it's down to respect. If you respect the class and the individuals that they're trying or they want to try, then generally you get a good response back. But you're going to get some that think they're smarter than you. You're going to get some that are just playing games, just playing mind games with you, you know? And you can get involved. You can use peer pressure, you know, if you have any other hold over them. But in my opinion, it's not really worth going down that route. You could be a person who doesn't even care. And I've seen teachers that don't care. They just turn up like a number, a seat on a bum. And that's a real shame because the students feel it and know it as well. But often, I take this with a pinch of salt, but often children can be like dogs, you know, they want to control, they want to rule, they want to get their own way, but they really respect and do well with boundaries. All right, so having a physical boundary between you and a child, for example, where I taught in Asia, it was very different. The children were very much more relaxed, you know, and they would engage with you physically a bit more, you know, with high fives and fist bumps and, you know, or maybe coming up behind you and teasing you or something. Where in the Western world, that's very much a no-no. And don't get me wrong, I've seen teachers have children on their laps and things like that, which is not an area I want to go down. But the children in Asia are very different to the Western children, but they still respect boundaries. So having a boundaries is what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, is very clear, really helps everybody thrive. The other thing I really found was that breaks. Like if you're dog training, you can't make that dog work for hours and hours and hours. It will just burn out and not respond. So I found that I would figure out or ask other teachers and students how often the breaks were throughout the day. Some schools had lots of breaks, other schools only had a few. And so I would, depending on the age group, I would put in my own breaks of time where they didn't have to focus and sit at the desks. They can go and play with some of the toys, or they can go and relax something else somewhere else in the classroom without running around. Or sometimes we'd leave early from the classroom so we could go downstairs and maybe integrate, bring in some physical activities such as sports. So often you'll find British teachers or sorry, Western teachers in Asia trying to get the kids outside and involved with sports. Number one reason for this, again, it's the same as dog training. If your children and students are tired, they're much less likely to cause hassle or trouble or be over challenging within the classroom. So that's worth knowing. The other thing is that it's also really good to break up the monotony of individual students working on their own. You bring them into small groups and then into half the class this side, half the class that side. You know, not too much competition, but a little bit of competition and a little bit of in fun and games. And then also try and display their work as much as possible because they're proud of it too. You know, there's nothing worse than coming out of a classroom and then finding in the bin, you know, like 30 or 40 pieces of work that the students worked on for the best part of, you know, an hour or maybe 2 hours in some classes I had. So breaking it down into stages, having boundaries, having respect, those things really, really helped in enjoying being a teacher myself. So yeah, that's kind of the key for I don't want to say controlling, but managing a classroom. But also there in the schools, there are other things you have to consider, and that's building alliances and friendships with other teachers. And not just teachers, the admin staff. If you can get all your stuff printed out before you went into that class, then your life was so much easier. If you're stood around in your lunch break, stood at the photocopier because I don't know, you weren't very polite or you weren't very nice to some of the admin staff, and they do the photocopying, then your lunch break is ruined because you've got to stand there and do all the photocopying. But that's one example. And it's the same with the cleaners. The cleaners can really help you out. So in some of the Asian schools, you'd have to leave your flip-flops, your shoes outside the classroom. And then sometimes children will be children. Your shoes or your footwear might be disappeared. They might be in the bin. And so having a relationship with the cleaners would help you find where your missing shoes are, or anything else that goes wandering around. Like, I don't know, maybe you've seconded and prepared some props, maybe some cones, traffic cones for the children to run around. Things get moved around, things disappear, and having good friendships and allies with staff members in the school can really, really help. So not just the cleaners and not just the other staff, but also coming down to making your life easier. Like I said about the photocopier, if you've got a good connection with the teacher in the years below and above you, should you get moved around and have to work with an older year group, and you're really on a good relationship with that teacher, you could always ask if they've got some materials that they've already printed out, or have a connection and know what they're working on, so that would give you a heads up of how to best use their time and give them the respect they deserve of working on something productive and progressive towards the end of their semester. All right, but it's not just about in school, online as well. There's also about building a lot of respect and connections with the parents. Again, yes, with the school as well. But online, it's much more important that you have a good relationship with the parents. And if you're dealing with adults, then it's much more important that you're transparent with the adult student that you're working with. Not just in regards to holidays or when you need to take breaks, but also in the way you deliver. And the other thing is that even with the children, it's really, really good to remind every individual that this is their education, and they have to take responsibility for it. A lot of children want to mess around and play and be silly and have fun, but at some point they realize that their education is very much linked to how much they can possibly earn in the future. And a lot of my adult students already knew this. They wanted to get better English because it meant better for their job perspective, better for their career and future promotions. So gently reminding that they ultimately have to take responsibility for their own education, which equals money, really does sometimes hit home with the student, and they're able to think about that a bit more. All right, okay. Whatever notes have I got here? So also neighbors and other family members is worth staying on a good side with, because you might have a student and then afterwards think there's a parent you're speaking to or a sibling, and it might not be. It might be the neighbor, might be the grandma. And so if you maintain positive, happy relations with anybody else that you're talking to, it might seem obvious is professionalism, but it's also about maintaining your maintaining your professionalism, but also the possibility of getting extra students or new students. Grandma might come into the camera and try and work out what's going on. And then once you build that conversation with grandma, she might then insist on other children using your service and seeing that you're a human being that they can talk to. I mean, not every grandma and family member speaks English, so bear that in mind. But ironically, a lot of families and a lot of parents do speak English, and that's generally the those that are quickest to understand the importance of learning English. So yeah, online is also more challenging, but it also has benefits as well. And definitely reminding the student about their responsibility of learning in their future definitely makes a big advantage. So I'm just thinking now, other parts of who am I as an English teacher? I purposely slow down my voice. I purposely think about the tonality, the melody, my volume. 99% of the students that I've spoken to in a classroom understand that I'm a man, and so rightly or wrongly, I naturally have a different, I don't know, a different presence within the classroom. You know, it doesn't matter if I've never been in that classroom before, and I'm talking to some of the students, and there's somebody at the back being really silly or doing something dangerous, and I raise my voice, "Oi! Stop doing that!" Immediately gets their attention, and again, you got to be careful. You can't raise your voice or shout at all the students. You know, not all the time. You need to be very, very careful to use it sparingly, because some students are very sensitive, and and it upsets me that I've actually made a student cry. There was a young girl, I think she was about 10 or 11, and she was in the adult class because she was very advanced. Her parents spoke very good English, and she was in the adult class, but she had a habit of filling out pages days ahead of time, and I asked her multiple times not to do it. And as you can guess where the story is going, this student kept filling it out, kept doing it, kept writing while I was talking and trying to explain things, and she just thought she was not going to listen. And I think I snatched the book away from her and said no, and she got really upset and ran out the classroom, and so did her friend. And then I had to apologize and all the rest. And I thought, oh, I feel really bad. So you got to think about how, even as a man's voice, you can come across very strong and very assertive and quite scary to some of the younger students. But generally, a woman teacher gets offered more jobs in Asia, but I think it's a little bit easier for the men to teach and control the classroom. Now, I don't know if that's because of the voice or the masculine presence, but that's just my thoughts. You might have a difference of opinion. You might have taught in lots of schools and did a lot better than all the men. And all power to you, I say. But everybody has their own experiences. So that's my experience. I would also say the beard helps as well. It sounds stupid, I know, but a beard kind of brings across a masculinity vibe. Well, I kind of hope it does anyway. And so that also goes with my voice and probably my stature. I mean, I'm not a big bloke by any means. I'm only a short ass. But being, I don't know, less empathic and sensitive and soft with the beard and my deep voice, I generally get a little bit more respect a little bit quicker. That's, like I said, that's my experience. And so the kind of teacher I am, I think, is hopefully a sensitive, fun, happy teacher that likes to engage and connect. I will mess around with the students and have fun and be silly, and accept it when they're pushing my buttons and teasing me as well. I have to accept that and take it on the chin and remember these are children. They don't always know when is the time for having fun and when is the time to stop. You know, that's my job to get it across to them about boundaries. But again, you know, these are human beings. They're testing the waters, and they're trying to learn as well. So I generally find teaching uplifting, and it makes me feel good. And I don't mean that like just in my heart, it fills my heart up, but it makes me feel a happy and a positive person, knowing that I can have a difference on these people's lives, or even just on their day. You know, if the amount of money I spent like buying just balloons sounds stupid, but just a packet of multicolored balloons at the end of the class session can have enormous amount of fun in that group, in that class, and connect with people, you know? A bag of balloons and some toy cars, some crayons and paper. You know, most students are happy to draw. Most students are really just happy to draw or make paper airplanes and throw them off the balcony, you know, out into the play area. You know, it's just so easy sometimes. So I might not be the most focused teacher of getting his maximum amount of work done, but I sometimes get a bit selfish and think about having fun for myself, and that makes me a happy person. So that's who I think I am as a teacher. And even when I'm working with adults, you know, I try to find some humor and some human connection with my students. You know, we all living in this real world with real problems, and so I acknowledge that. And then also I make sure that I bring some lightheartedness to the lesson, you know, try and make some fun out of it and jokes out of it, trying to be such sensitive culturally as much as possible. So I really strive for fun and happiness and engaging. Not too long ago, I read a quote by Elon Musk. I'm sure it was Elon Musk, said that you don't need to tell your child to go and get on that computer and play computer games for longer. You know, there's computer games really understand how to be engaging with children. And the classroom and the school systems haven't really changed. They haven't really changed at all in like 100 years. Even now, children, they all go into one room, sit down at the desks and look forward at the teacher, with the teacher doing most of the speaking. And that's been the same for, you know, hundreds of years. With our knowledge and our growth in parenting and in professionals and technology, can we not find a better way to connect and engage with a student? Isn't it much better that we have a bag of balloons and we do some science work and then they play with the balloons than them preferring just to go on their phone and play, you know, a little game that does nothing? So I'm quite passionate about engaging and connecting and making a positive vibes with learning. So yeah, I'm not going to ramble on anymore. That's who I am as a teacher. Let me know who's your favourite teacher. What memories do you have of that teacher sticking in your head? Were they really horrible to you? Did they hit you? Were they really fun? Did they spend money on you? Did you have a really beautiful teacher or a really handsome teacher? Let me know some of the teaching experiences you had as a young person. And then also tell me now how you teach. How do you teach your children? How do you teach maybe the neighbour's child of tying up a shoelace? How do you teach if you're a teacher or just explaining to maybe other members of staff how to use a piece of software? Do you consider that? Do you think about how you're going to give across this knowledge? Interesting to find out. Interesting thought experiment. How do you teach? I think it's a poignant question. Kind of says who you are inside as well. All right, that's it for this video. Thank you very much. Oh, one last thing. Please subscribe. I got 97% of people don't subscribe. Please, please, please subscribe. It helps me to make more videos and upgrade my stuff. my camera and microphone. So please, please, please subscribe and share this with somebody that might like it. All right, that's it for now. See you in the next video. Don't forget to comment. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.